Okay, I just showing these planes are going over really fast. Unfortunately, it is it's a very wet, cloudy night out there, so even though the planes are coming over quite frequently over the roof and are quite loud to me, in reality, I can't film them because of the cloud cover. Whereas if it was a clearer night, also the picture quality on the mobile is not very clear. I've noticed that, so I'm not able to film them as clear as what my naked eye sees them. And that is true of the sound too. That's why I've mentioned this, that the sound element, like my voice is like right next to the mobile. But if I, even though my ears pick up the sound of the planes, the sound of all the staged but also real work that goes on around this area on my street, and basically any street I go on, in this particular suburb of Leichhardt, which is in the city of Sydney, in the country of Australia, which used to be a lot less controlled when I was younger and a lot freer. But gradually over the years, these systems have come into place, and I think the use of technology has been part of this, because the more technology you have, the more connection you have between even so-called real people, means that technology can be used for friendly purposes, or what I would call even beneficial purposes, like connecting with people you want to, but also it can be used by groups of people to watch and keep in contact with one another so that they can watch, patrol and control other people. So we know this, even if it was only small groups, you would understand that communication, especially more mobile communication. I mean, these days you don't have to run to a phone box to talk to someone, do you? No, you can communicate with people in a split second, even on a mobile. And that is the least advanced of the technology that is actually going on in this matrix. That is only what the so-called average civilian is given, the computer and the mobile. But we know that the armies and the technology that is given even to military is very, very advanced. We know this because you see it occasionally on the news or on the TV. The same as we know that, that a human being can be cloned. But supposedly they never did it. They just cloned Dolly the sheep. We've been told this. But this, of course, is not realistic. Any person that would really actually believe, as I probably would have in the past, but of course I probably wouldn't have even cared, because I'd have probably thought, well, most people deal with their own local reality. In other words, that which is only around themselves, like myself. In other words, what my ears, my sight and sound sees around me is all I really deal with. That's how I know it's a matrix, because when they come down on you at that level, that's when you realise it's a control system and that there's advanced technology around you. Whether I can film it and show it with a mobile, no. Not when it's so advanced that they know when I pick up the mobile. They know, where I'm going, what I'm going to do. They know what I'm thinking every second, because the technology is reading my mind. because the combination, even if you take it at a psychic level, so you could take it at a psychic spiritual level where the AI system or the artificial android beings, which have always been around, they are most of people that have any position of power are these beings, because they're a species that or a relative, or in other words, they are of the same maker as the main being or entity that controls this reality. Just going to show how much the planes are trying to distract me, even because, see, it's late of a night, so they can't do it any other way except, with the planes over the roof. I have to go outside the door to show them, because although they come over my roof, and yes, we have today we don't have as many lights on the place opposite, and we just have the lights opposite. They vary the lights, but some days they have like 3 lots of lights in that place opposite all night. They always like to leave some lights on that get in your eyes. Basically, it's a program that can't be filmed because, I've noticed, just when I just go down to the corner and through the little park at the end of my street, well, it's actually a big park, I notice how they've added all these really bright lights, in other words, if I try to, because that is actually the most secluded spot to walk. In the past, you wouldn't even see people there, but now, of course, you have all the stalking patrollers that pop up. Even in the daytime, you didn't get a real lot of people at the back of the park, at that actual end. This I can't prove, because it's just that I've lived here for, nearly 30 years, so I know how many people you see on the street, because if you walk down the same streets every day for 30 years, you know those streets. But if you show that to someone that doesn't live here or who is part of this control program, because it is a controlled, literal, spiritual limiting. In other words, it's a deliberate spiritual attack on anyone that is or wants to be a spiritual human being, or anyone that has any positive human traits, if you want to put it basically. Because I only use the word spiritual because I'm aware now of the difference between an AI artificial being, or even those that have turned psychopathic and narcissistic as the God entity of this world. We're told this. We're told that Lucifer from the beginning became consumed with envy and, felt that it should be number one, should be God, should replace God, should replace and be the controller of everything. And this being, that was due to envy, because it's only when you have, envy and competitiveness creeps into your personality that you will seek to overtake another person, if it's at a real level, in this human earth level, or at that higher level where you have so-called beings that are outside of the earth, say, where they also, of course this is not common, this only happened, according to what I've been told and the stories I've heard, only happened with this one particular being. But it didn't happen only with the one particular being, in the sense that this being had many admirers, and basically a third of what existed, which is a sizable portion, was willing to follow this being out of its normal happy environment, you could say, because it's a bit like going into the unknown, blindly following a being that you should be able to see wants to be God, but you also believe that this is possible and this is the correct thing to do. That somehow what has created everything is somehow not entitled to remain God. And the plane is going over as I say that, indicating that this area agrees with that. See? Can you see that plane? Because that is literally a real military plane. When I say that, I mean it is literally an army plane, or of your real army that exists in this real earth. All these artificial people or android beings, or even if they're just humans that are very psychopathic in nature and are employed, say, in the army, or employed from many parts of the world even. Because, in this is what I'm trying to say, like in Sydney, where I live, over my lifetime I have seen a gradual influx to where Sydney is now like the same as being in any part of the world, because basically instead of keeping, yourself, you have different countries where you usually have particular types of people that only reside in that country. But now we have like where everyone is scattered all over the world. So that kind of means that because of that, if you have like, say, the powers that be, that say run a country, and they decide to, because obviously not everyone comes from every country into Sydney, but certainly a large amount do. Now, it's the powers that be that select who is allowed in and who isn't. Now, so what I'm trying to say is they may or may not be selecting, those that are peaceable, or at least they may appear to be. But also if you get them to join the army, because what I'm trying to say is everyone in Leichhardt is part of the army, even though they look like civilians, even though they look like regular bus drivers, even though they look like regular truck drivers, even though the planes that go over appear to be random and you probably say they're driven by pilots and they're going somewhere. They may be going somewhere, but en route they are going over my house to suppress me, because they are part of the satanic military operation against real human beings that have any potential for high that have any potential or any positive traits, because the artificial ones don't have any love, okay? They don't have any compassion. They don't have any feelings towards any form of life. They pretend to. They emulate and copy human beings. They study them. That's why they watch them. That's why they compete with you and try to outdo you. That's why, like round here, next door now has a very weedy, messy front, because I do. Not because she likes weeds. That's why when, I was putting pots into the backyard, I had the neighbours down the back screaming, "Better get some more pots," almost frantic. And that's why when a relative came and fed the bird out the front, and I looked down the street and I saw the hand of a neighbour just a door down, the other neighbour, reaching out and feeding the blackbird at the same time as my relative was doing it. And I actually thought to myself, if that isn't blatant copying, I don't know what is. I noticed it because I noticed these little things. See, I see how they emulate and copy. My relative saw it too, but he didn't take any notice. And they only did it when he was there doing it. This is my point. They don't do it any other time. Unless you do it or they're competing, they don't do it. I'm just going to show how often these planes go over. There is a plane somewhere. Where is it? Behind that tree there. And that's how it works, because they're highly competitive, they're anti-life, they have no high vibration. That means no potential for any liking for anything except their own survival. They're survival machines, literally. The psychopathic nature shows this, like what we're told about psychopaths. But I personally know that most that's around are technical machine artificial beings, and they have been around all along, because what happened was they started to breed or multiply, shall we say. In other words, at one point, I'll go in because it's gone quiet. I don't want anyone to hear, even though they already know, but I still don't want to give my voice, because they copy your voice, they pick up your inflections and your tones, they try to pretend to be as, even though I talk hard sometimes because I'm angry and because I'm forcible, because basically, of course, if your life depends on it, you're kind of passionate about survival and about showing what's taking place around you, even though you know that no one, either understands it if you said it or believe it, because they might be real humans who are in the dark, but essentially mostly what's around are artificial survival machine beings who don't care less about anything except their own survival, and that because they are programmed to live in the moment, that's what makes them so dangerous. Because if you live in the moment and you're a survival machine being, you're the same ones that have destroyed real life or potential real life, in history even, shall we say. These same people that surround me are reincarnations of the same beings that literally destroyed, the highest spiritual human being 2,000 years ago. This is something that they don't want known, because if this was really known, and also that descendants of that being still exist, because that being came, as I've said before, for two purposes: to find its own kind and to preach to them, to show them that they had forgotten their true self, or in other words, like forgotten, because when you come into the matrix or the earth, you live the life from a baby, as we know, and I've been told this, as a human being. You don't think that that you've been here before, or that you come from anywhere else, or that you go on. You assume you live a limited, live-die human life, just as I did. But that was the purpose of this being coming 2,000 years ago, was to tell its own kind, only its own kind, because it was aware. It was aware. This being was aware. I shouldn't say it, because that makes a link with the artificial ones, because I would normally say it or them for that, because they're a duality androgyne being, artificial being, that has combined its body and emulates the AI God of this reality, the artificially intelligent, in the sense that it doesn't have positive human traits. It's a survival machine being, and always was. Even though, like the people around here, and like those, they copy it. It copied those around, or at least was able to seduce those around by showing the more creative, the more compassionate traits. Now, see, sometimes I don't know this, because obviously I have been denied my knowledge and my past and all this sort of thing. This is what I'm trying to say. So I don't know what abilities this being had before it came to Earth, or how it seduced, a large number of beings. Some people use the word angels because they talk about heaven and angels and all this sort of thing. I just say beings because I admit that I have no recollection of these things. I piece together truth based on my own reality and based on the information I get. It wouldn't matter if I got no information, I would still know that I was in a controlled area, that I was in a literal, controlled area. In other words, where people are deliberately suppressing me. Okay, so at the moment, because it's very late of a night, I've only got the planes and I haven't gone down the road to where you'll see the traffic and stuff. But don't forget that this also depends on what time it is, but you're always aware of this patrol system, okay? You're always aware of it. And, am I showing the frequency of the planes going over my head or not? I try to, oh yeah, there's a car pulling out there. They're very quiet on the street because I'm filming. They actually are. Sometimes they don't care. See, if I occasionally just show what they're like most of the time, then it doesn't make my, what I film valid. But also, they know that I am at a very low frequency at this very moment. My body is feeling pain. So if you're in physical pain or in not feeling comfortable with your body, that is enough to keep your frequency and vibration low, and therefore you're unhappy anyway. You see what I'm saying? So it matters not. There's another plane out there too, but it's not over the roof, it's somewhere else. It's in my line of sight. Yes, it just went through that tree there, but you can't see the tree because the mobile picture is too fuzzy, and it's very late of a night and it's dark. But it just went through where my line of sight was, you see, because they are staged patrolling military like planes. They are literally of your military. That's what I'm trying to say. They are of the army of Australia, shall we say. Literally. It's just that they are using civilian vehicles as instead of having tanks going down the main street here. They have garbage trucks and buses and trucks, large vehicles, and most cars with their lights on that drive aggressively, and excessive amounts of motorbikes and excessive amounts of bikes everywhere. And if they can't get you, they will send even push bikes with flashing lights going past you on the street that nearly knock you over. And then of course you have the pedestrian patrol force, the civilians on foot. These ones like to get your attention. They always move. See, this was pointed out by someone else that was supposed to be a targeted spiritual individual that I saw on the computer, and like myself, very low down, not getting many people looking, but still trying to show the matrix that was around them. They're not in Sydney, Australia. They're in some strange country overseas. Very intimidated by the presence of the possessed one next door. This is possession from past lives. These ones, if people actually understood that these apparent, even delicate, innocent females that talk ever so sweet, you can tell how false they are, that they are even poor actors, but most people buy it. But that's only because if you see their actions over a period of time and then they express a bit like I could use so many personal examples like I tried to with how they copy things, because because I can only do it and explain things according to my own life. But I could easily point it out. And if I had actually, say, filmed these things and then explained how false it is, it would just show at a personal level how fake these people are. But they essentially, if real human beings, real spiritual human beings, or even so-called, see the plane over there? Can you see it going over there in front of my eyes? That's in my eyes. Those planes are off course. They're not even going anywhere. Not every plane that goes over my roof or follows me around if I go somewhere is actually en route. But of course they could easily divert their route even if they had passengers, I would think, but I don't think most of them are. They look like regular planes, but that's just because, like I say, in order to present their camouflage so that no one can see that I'm being literally it's a war. It is actually a war being waged against real positive human beings, or those that want to be positive human beings like I want to be. I don't want to be part of an AI system. I don't want to be part of combining with technology. I don't want to support these beings that have no real positive human traits. I don't want to support their fakery, because I know that the minute they get full control, their fakery will drop, and then you will see the true destructive nature of them. Because if you are only faking being compassionate, if you're only faking to care about real life, the minute you don't have to fake that anymore and you've got your control system in place, which is why they try to get rid of real life like me, because they don't want real human beings to connect with real humans. They want them to connect with the artificial android beings and the military planes that go over. They want, because those same pilots that are manning those planes that go over like that, they are artificial beings, but they will marry. They will try to connect with real life in personal relationships to control them. And they will convince them to technically bring life into the world. They will convince them to, basically they'll convince them to live in a controlled manner as that way they have control, but also they will be extracting negative energy in those relationships, whether the person is aware of it or not. I've mentioned this before. I have seen, I could mention personal examples just around me, and it's taken me like, say, 10, 15 years to observe it, even though I was not aware of the Matrix until the last, fully 5 years, even though they started to come down on me 6 years ago. But for the first year, I had to figure out what was going on. I knew that my senses were real and that I was being stalked and patrolled and harassed by the local council, by all the employers, the false works that were being staged around me. How whenever you walk through the park, they would bring in the lawn mowers and the wind blowers that they never had before, going every time really loud, like extra loud. Like you shouldn't have to do those activities with high-powered things that make these very irritating anti-life noise. And also this goes on all the time, because if they expose you to it, to where they also have all your neighbours making noise as well, and every vehicle on the road, or at least the vast majority, making noise as they go past you only. At least this is as far as I know, because obviously if you observe that 99% are part of this control patrol system in your local area, you do doubt how many actual real humans are in this actual area. They've probably gradually segregated me and isolated me from real humans gradually over time. In other words, they ease out any real humans out of a specific area. This is an army control base area. It has gradually been infiltrated and took over by the military army that is like part of, you know, I mean, I would have to say that it's part of the powers that be, because that, to me, it would be like these are all like part of your big institutions, which would be part of what controls the whole country. But I suppose there is the small possibility that it could be still secret, even though it makes up the whole suburb and the adjoining suburbs. In other words, to where there could be deception, and the numbers where you have only very small numbers of real people still, say, in positions of, say, I don't know, like council, that sort of thing, or even those that run your whole country or countries all over the world. Oh look, there we have can you see the opposite there, and the plane going over at the same time? But look at that, the flashing. Is it coming out? The red is the colour of Lucifer, Satan. I have been aware of this early on. Now, whether those that are opposite are conscious or are mind controlled, I would say, personally, I find it strange that people, when I say people, when I say people, you see, it's very hard for me to say humans, people, and whatever. These are not the same as real life spiritual human beings that have descended in spiritual form, because they're created naturally from an original spiritual being, say 2,000 years ago. Before that, it would be something else. But don't forget the numbers and their segregation. Now, I can only speak on my own area. So I don't know if there are bigger numbers of human beings in other parts of the world, or even other parts of my own country, even other parts of the city for that matter. All I know is that I'm always surrounded in this segregation or isolation. That means that I'm always surrounded usually by, the patrol force of the AI system, which may or may not be controlling, the android beings, or even just psychopathic, narcissistic human beings who are so negative in their nature and have dismissed and let go of their positive traits as a defense mechanism at a psychological level against, it's like a defense mechanism at a psychological level. I'm trying to be psychological here, but it's essentially a rejection of who they are, because they feel that they're not good enough, because they've never experienced the higher vibration, or never experienced understanding or any form of love, and this is unfortunate. And I myself have been part of this in my own life. I have, and so maybe now some of the punishment, or the karma, as they say, comes back to haunt you, because you can't right the wrongs of your past. You can acknowledge them and accept them, then therefore you are also riddled with shame and guilt, and therefore your frequency and vibration is low, and you attack your own body. And then you have the artificial ones around attacking your body with negative energy from every single house almost in Leichhardt, because some of these people live in the places and others don't. They just come and they're vacant places, because they actually said that the Italian Forum, which is just down the road, They actually described it as a ghost town or a ghost place because there was no one there. And everything has died around Leichhardt. They said all the businesses have gone broke and they can't do business. But the funny thing is, of course, when I go out, we have this enormous traffic, all this activity, all these buses, all these trucks, and even every shop. Even in that forum, which they described as a ghost town, there's always people walking past. There's one or two coffee shops that cater. They're the only things left, but they're there only to cater for the fake artificial patrolling beings that stroll through there and pretend to get the coffee because that's what I do. So it's like that, but that's the only reason. But there isn't. But even in the past, when it was more productive, I rarely saw any people wandering through there or looking around. They stop and look. They stop to look at you to consume your energy. It's so staged and so obvious, but it's also very intimidating. It's threatening, and it basically takes your peace from you because you're not a person that wants attention 24/7 like they do. They have to have the energy and the attention all the time. They're energy vampire machine type beings. Whether you are a human being that can no longer sustain yourself as a real human being with any positive energy because you've rejected your true self, as they say that at a psychological level from when you're a child, or whether you are a totally AI being, a machine being, that basically never had even any potential for human positive traits, like the planes that go over. They are AI controlled, planes. The pilots are not real, not real, human beings. Real human beings, as I've said before, and this is what you learn as you observe the different people around, real human beings have potential for all emotions, all feelings, both good and bad. They desire to be happy and desire to feel usually love and understanding and compassion, and usually take pleasure in pleasant activities. Usually unpleasant activities or any form of violence or aggression offends usually a real human being. The artificial beings are reverse beings. They get satisfaction and energy out of negative energy from human beings. So they actually don't enjoy pleasant activities or love or compassion or any of. They emulate those things in order to seduce and control real life, but they don't experience any positive human emotions. They don't like them. It disturbs them, which is why they tried to limit and control someone like myself, because I don't want to feel depressed and angry and low all the time. And they know that. They know that I try to find some pleasure in life, even though I'm limited. And they don't like that because they don't experience that. They find that that makes them very angry. And it makes them competitive too. They want to then get on top of you and control you and limit you. And also they don't like you giving out a positive human vibration when they only experience negative, and when they know that if another real human being sees a positive vibration, say, in another human being, that they will be attracted to that person, and therefore you are then uniting with your own kind. Their name of the game is what I was told 6 years ago, 5 years ago, when I first looked into stuff, even though it was by a demigod. Divide and conquer is their aim. That means they divide human beings by falsities and false ideas, and then they conquer by dividing them and separating them. That plane just went over, but and that is the name of the game. And I'm just diverging here by doing things, even though it's been raining, and It's very late. I don't know why those planes are still going. They're not supposed to be going. But, you know, I'm actually sweating even low because I'm losing energy because I'm trying to film those planes, but also trying to make some sense because I want to at least speak so that someone is grasping what I'm trying to explain here. Of course, the demigods will explain it better. But that's the problem, is the demigods are part of the AI system. They are your false gods. Demigods are the false gods of this reality, depending on your belief, of course. If you want to be part of technology and what they call transhumanism even, it's all the same thing. These are just terms. But transhuman is an accurate description because it's trans, which means it's combining, it's mingling. In fact, basically, these beings have mingled everything. They're not an original, authentic, spiritual human being. They're not of that bloodline. Some people don't think the bloodline exists, but that's because they don't understand that even 2,000 years ago, the Christ being that people talk about, and that may not even be the right word, but that being came to combine with its own kind, real spiritual human beings, but also to create more of its kind because the numbers were not large, you know. And this happened even though, according to history, this particular Christ being, which is filled with the spirit of original creation. In other words, that's what this being was, sent from original creator, part of original creation, or a relative, if you like, of the original God that creates most things. This earth matrix is a creation of the artificial demigod, the Lucifer that came and seduced the original man-woman relatives of original creation, if you like, you know, where the earth was meant to be an original little spiritual, real life earth, natural and spiritual and real life. That means that it was meant to be in harmony with nature and in harmony with other life, in harmony with everything. But it wasn't meant to be controlled by an artificial seductive demigod or by technology. It wasn't meant to be like that. It wasn't necessary then. But that was what they called the fall from grace. That means we're just show you that these planes come pretty frequent. Am I showing this or not? Between the planes and trying to talk about past, present and future. See, past, present and future is another deception too. That deception being, of course, that there is no past, present or future. But there again, I'm trying to be clever here, and I'm putting too much into this little thing, and I'm sweating and trying too hard, almost as though time's running out, when that is just the pressure and the energy consumption of what's taking place around me. I shouldn't really be caring about any of it, because when it really comes down to it, you know, I was suppressed and targeted, and I became aware of this very early on because I wondered why. You know, I wondered why the whole area was basically converging and trying to stalk and limit me in every possible way, and I couldn't figure out why. And it was only when I it clicked over that there were a lot of psychopathic people around, and I was aware that the psychopathic people don't have any positive emotion, that they don't. And then when I was told that everything is frequency, vibration and energy, and that human beings are frequency, vibration and energy too, that everything is frequency and vibration and energy. Human beings are the only potential for positive frequency, vibration and energy in the earth. Or at least that type of human being, real human beings. The rest are all artificial or psychopathic types of human beings which have no potential for high frequency and vibration, or any potential for any sort of love, any sort of feeling good about doing what we would term positive things. They actually only vibrate low and experience pleasure only through low vibration, or in other words, negative feelings and emotions. So they, if you are unhappy, they are happy, you know. But if you are happy, they feel very angry and destructive and want to bring you down. What they want to make you unhappy, because they're like, we don't want you to outshine us. Because they know that high vibration or positive, genuine positive feelings always dominates. And also it gets attention of other real life. See, it's divide and conquer, divide and separate is the name of the game. You know, like to isolate me to where I'm running like a silly fool out to show the, you know, the controlling planes that go over. And normally there would be more cars on the street, even at this late time, where you'd see ones with their, sitting in their cars with their lights on, shining their high beam right down the street at you, to where you're aware that they're stalking. In the past, if you saw this sort of thing, you would feel intimidated and you would actually think there's something weird going on. But it's not like you can do anything about it, is there? I mean, like, what do? Do you ring the authorities and say there's suspicious cars all over Leichhardt everywhere I go that are like, what would the word be? Almost like in the past you'd have said they're like some sort of, there's almost some, they've almost got, but of course there is inversion and a type of what most people would call that a perversion, but it is like really it's inversion, because they're inverted beings. They're in a duality, or, you know, they have no true identity, even at the male-female level. There's none of this. They present certain images. They may, like all over Leichhardt, you see everyone walking a dog, everyone pushing a pram. The numbers don't bear any reality to the 14,000 that they say actually reside here, if you allow for the amount of actual small beings and pram pushers, etc. I have been saying this for the last couple of years, but saying it, and even if I film it, doesn't prove it, because you'd have to have the mobile going 24/7. And don't forget that if they know you're filming, they don't have to turn up. They can send then someone else. They don't have to have a pram pusher, but they do that because it makes them look more human, and as though they're more, you know, they love children, they love animals, they're, you know, they're the best type of human person. But it's all staged. It's not real. They have no feelings towards the prams, the babies, the animals. It's all about getting attention to seduce real people, and also to camouflage their true nature, you know. Let's face it, a psychopath doesn't want everyone to know they're a psychopath, do they? But an artificial being, even more so, an AI being, doesn't want everyone to know they're an AI being. Not unless they're associating only with their own kind, which are AI beings. And the psychopath actually doesn't tend to have any genuine relationships or associations anyway. And they may not care, greatly as to the nature of the other person. They may even fool themselves. I don't know. Don't forget, there's a lot of foolery even amongst the AI, the systems, because they are energy vampires literally, and because they only thrive off getting the energy off everything around them. They don't care where they get it from, but their greatest source of satisfaction and their most potent source is obviously a real spiritual human being that has potential for positive human traits. That's a plane going over. Will I film that or not? It's already gone, but as you can see, the frequency of the planes, but also the frequency of those planes is negative because they are military destructive planes. All military planes are destructive, as we know. It's just that because you think they're passenger planes and they appear to be going somewhere, it's the same as all the vehicles. Like I say, if this area really exposed itself completely, the garbage trucks would be seen as tanks. They're army tanks. The buses would be seen as military vehicles. The big, huge semi-trailers and all these huge trucks with huge red lights all over them, particularly at night when you notice it, but in the daytime they have the lights too, but you don't notice it because it's daylight as much. But then they make the astronomical noise as they go past, the aggressive noise, as if to say, we don't like you. Basically, that's what it is. And then the cars doing the same thing. The trucks and the buses have potential, but even the motorbikes and the cars, they're not normal cars even, because the sounds they make, a normal car wouldn't have been able to make those sounds, say, before 6 years ago. They've actually put things into the engines of their cars where they can make these loud noise. If I pointed it out to either the matrix control people around, they would actually say, oh yes, they have actually changed the engine. That's what a lot of the young ones do, or a lot of the cars now have on. And this is actually true. All the cars have different lights to what they used to have, much brighter, much bigger, and the flashing lights. It's actually dangerous to have flashing lights every time cars pull, but that is to suppress me because it's very irritating and you can't ignore it. Whereas a still light, I pointed out, that is not mind control. A flashing light is part of mind control. Just as the images on the screen often will flash with videos and things now, much more than what they used to. Something that is still is not as much mind control. I've observed this, and it's the same on the street. They have mind control out there on the street and mind control on the computer everywhere. It's all mind control everywhere, it's just that we don't know it. But it's only mind controlling real life. It is the end time where most people are part of this mind control system of real life human beings, because they want the transhumanism, you see. They want to control humans, because if they can get humans' mind to be controlled and taken over by the computer, then they think that it will give them longevity, or even, in their own delusional minds, immortality. And who am I to say if it's true or not? I wouldn't know. I thought that was a plane, but it will come. But I can't wait here. It's very, very late. I don't know why those planes are still going. And, I feel intimidated even out here. But, because you are aware of how much they want to compete with you, suppress you. Because they're machine beings, they live in a continual survival, competitive mode of thinking. They see your minutest actions as a threat and as competition to them. That's how these machine beings are. This is what makes them dangerous to real life, just as you know, the psychopathic narcissist has been explained to some of us in recent times to be dangerous for this reason, because if, even though it looks as though no one is watching me here now, every single house around me is actually watching me. And you notice how they have this marker across the front here? It won't come out in the dark, but they've got this orange fenced off right in front of me here. It doesn't matter, but these little things are just things that they do all over Leichhardt. The orange is extremely prominent. Some people have said this is an indication of a secret, almost religious belief system. And of course, some people might even put, like I say, it's all part of the original suppression of human beings, the original seduction. Is this car going to pull in front? Yes, a little bit late. See how they always have this car pulling in front? They're not going to show themselves too much, because look at the red. Can you see the red? See how they flashed the great big red? They never did that before on cars. That is an acknowledgement that they are part of the God entity's system. Now, whether you could say if you wanted to give the benefit of the doubt, in other words, you're giving the benefit of the doubt to deliberate, controlling, destructive people, because you're like saying, oh, well, look, is this just that the powers that be now control all the vehicles, so the God entity has got its lights on every car, and that even the negative suppressed human beings that are a bit psychopathic and narcissistic in nature use those vehicles and don't care, and like the fact that they've got more flashing lights, like the fact that it's bigger, because they like attention and they don't care. They accept these things, whereas like if it was a normal real reality and there were all real humans just driving the vehicles and all the, you know, they would actually say, oh, some of these things are not safe, even for them driving, much less for pedestrians and everyone, and also that it's unnecessary, because we never needed all these bright lights before, did we? We have bright street lights. You don't need to have cars that have their lights on high beam in a busy big city with extreme street lights. There's no reason that cars should be leaving their headlights on high beam when it is broad sunlight and 100 degrees in the shade. No, but they do all these things. And there's no reason that anyone would sit in their car with their engine running, using up petrol, spewing out petrol fumes in a so-called green area that is concerned about the so-called natural earth. All this sort of, you know, it's basically deception and out and out, like, I now accept that it is a world full of, you know, not truth in any way. You have people preaching one thing and doing something else. Preaching about a green environment while leaving their car engines running, spewing out unnecessary petrol fumes while they're still. You know, all these things, little things that you see them do around Leichhardt, which I've observed, but they do them to annoy the real-life human being, me. They do it so that you're aware of their control patrol system around. But it also shows a contradiction to what these same people preach and actively, supposedly engage in real life, because it's all about showmanship, it's all about being false, it's all about pretending to be real life when they're really anti-life and don't care about anything except their own survival, and they don't care about destruction of anything. If they do care about it, it would only be if it affected their survival. And this is the reality. Last plane, if I can get the last plane to show that they're overhead. Can we show it? Yes, I think so. Maybe not. There it goes, just over my head, but I just don't want to go out because I think there's a bit of rain sprinkling there. It's going to rain again. I must fold up. I'm just not doing things as I should. I shouldn't even be making this video because I didn't plan on. I ramble a lot anyway, but I just wanted to show that the planes that how can I show that these are not legitimate passenger planes? How can you show, showing the actual area and this control matrix around in this area is not something that I can do with a mobile, especially as I haven't got the mobile with me 24 hours and going 24 hours. That's what you would need to have done over the last 5 or 6 years, to have it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 5 years straight. And even then you would have to say, what was the area like before? Was there always cars pulling in and out everywhere? Because until you see it as a system and realise it's around you and that it's controlling my senses, this is how you know. Because I have seen this when I have looked at videos of regular streets in other countries, where I can also see the matrix. But it's not around me, but it's like still showing. I can see the artificial control beings. I can spot them, and they're sort of everywhere in like in a major city usually is like a really, the plane is going over out there as I say that. In a major city, they can concentrate. Because you've got a lot of people, so you can get them concentrated around individuals, and that, whereas it would be a lot harder, say, if I live right out somewhere. But of course it's not practicable for me to do that. I can't do that. But it would mean that there was less suppression. When you're in a city, you're a prime target. In the past, I would have thought, it's convenient for me to live in a city. I got all my facilities. I didn't realise that the downside of that would be that when I got old, that all these things would turn on me. And also that the facilities are not as necessary now too, because they're using the computer for everything. They want me to buy everything on the mobile. Also, they know that I haven't adapted to that. And actually, because I do think that if you can't, I think it's poor hopes if you can't go down to the corner to pick up a pizza, where you have to, not be, even if you're like myself, where you're not athletic and not real active, I'm like, you should be able to still do some basic things for yourself. But they don't want people to do that. Want people inside their houses only using the mobile for negative reasons, only using it, to keep real life suppressed. All these people around here, they get all their food delivered, to their door. That way they can spend the rest of their time stalking and patrolling me and watching me. Whereas if they had to do a bit more of their own life activities, and I'm not saying some of them don't, that they don't hold other jobs and things, because it is a collaborative effort. And it's not just a few people, because it's like thousands and thousands and thousands. They can alternate even by doing other things. In other words, like even if they held a job, like the people opposite, they go out maybe to a job if they're young, to suppress real life and to continue other services. But they are still part of that control patrol system at given times. It's all timed, you see. It's all part of timing. It's like a system. That's how it works. That's how it works. I can't believe there's another plane. Can I get it? Another plane. It is going to rain. And it's going to rain. And today they will have all these workmen invading when the sun comes up, as soon as it comes up, doing all this real but also noisy, anti-human, low frequency vibrational mechanical noise, because sound is a vibration. This was pointed out to me by someone else a couple of years ago when I was talking, and they're like, well, sound is a vibration, and that's right. So basically sound is used against my senses and against human senses if they come down on you. So, if you have like birds singing, that's a pleasant sound, a pleasant human vibration. But if I have like very what do you call them, drills, or what do you call those things, jackhammers going into the ground, that's a negative human sound, and that's what I'm surrounded by from when the sun comes up till when it nearly goes down around Leichhardt. And that's only part of it, but it's like a sight and sound human suppression to suppress your potential for feeling good, because they see that as a threat, because the artificial AI system and the artificial satanic negative beings, I have to use that word because it's of the dark, so I use that word, okay? Because we see that in movies, the vampires and the satanic things in old movies are always of the dark. They're dead, dark vampire spirits that feed off human life. So, it's a pity it's cloudy, because otherwise the picture might be a bit impressive. Sometimes those planes, when they have all the coloured lights flashing on them and stuff, it takes your sight and your senses, but it is impressive. It's just that it's noisy, and it is part of showing me that they have a matrix and a control system around me in the whole area. Like I say, it's every vehicle, it's almost every person as far as I can see. You can see this by their actions. Like with the patrol force, the people, the civilians that are around you. It's not that they're on the street, it's the fact that it's the way they operate on the street. It's a bit like the cars. If they're beeping aggressively and making aggressive sounds, even a normal person would say, "Oh, that's a mean vehicle. That person is either showing off or making a lot of unnecessary noise." And it's the same with the buses and all the vehicles. And it's the same with the civilian people on the street. It's not that they're people on the street or even the amount. It's the fact that they're a continual flow of people, even if it's only a few. But it's also their actions, the way they move in front of you, the same way the cars just happen to pull out as you walk past or pull in as you come past. It's all timed to intimidate and to secretly show you, it's not a secret to you, but it looks like a secret to everyone else, that they are watching and stalking you and patrolling you. So if people always walk in front of you, like for instance, if they're on the other side of the road and they just happen to cross right in front of you, and this happens all the time, and there would be no reason for it either. You'd have to say that goes beyond coincidence, that every time you walk down just a small block, that the people cross in front of you. They wouldn't have done that in the past, because it would only randomly happen now and again. You see, this is how you know it's a control system, and that all the cars and all the people and all the trucks and all the vehicles, and yes, even all the planes, as remote as it may sound, are part of this control system. Because see, it's very late of a night and I haven't gone very far outside. These planes are just going over my roof continuously. And do that amount of planes, why do they go over my roof? And of course, I noticed yesterday there was a helicopter that because it was really, really late, and I was, like avoiding the cars, and I was in a spot where they couldn't bring like semi-trailers or buses, then they sent a helicopter over. Just so that you're always never on your own and can't find peace in yourself. The artificial beings can't find peace in themselves. They love this chaos. They like activity going on, just as they like to cause distress and anger in real life human beings. They get the negative energy. They can't settle in themselves because they don't have a true self or a true spiritual base in themselves. And this is putting it fancy. They can't be content in themselves. They're only machines that scan the environment. And even the psychopathic nature is like this. This is where they need to get back their true self and accept who they are and be happy with that. Because if you can accept yourself, then you no longer have any need to compete with others. So therefore the envy, which is the problem and the underlying distress that turns into animosity towards other people, if you can eliminate that competitive, envious kind of dissatisfaction with yourself, and actually kind of accept that other people might have some things that you don't, but not be overly worried about it. Okay, so it's as many have pointed out, and the demigods do this. Of course, everyone will still always sometimes notice if someone has something they don't, particularly if it's something they like. But it's not to where it consumes you, like these beings to where 24 hours a day they want to be part of a control patrol system because of some sort of strange animosity that stems usually from dissatisfaction, from not accepting their own self or having an identity themselves, and that turns into envy and animosity towards myself, for instance, and last plane. It may not be the last plane, but it's the last one I am filming because it is too silly. Also, the whole neighbourhood, the whole street is getting vast energy out of me every time I go out there. They know that my arm is aching, and yet I'm still filming those planes because they laugh, because they're like, we don't care if she says that she's surrounded and all this stuff, because most people think that she is just paranoid. Whereas in reality, the machine beings are paranoid because they're the ones stalking me. But because I can't prove that I'm being stalked by a whole neighbourhood, a whole suburb and the adjoining suburbs, basically it looks as though I'm paranoid. So they're not out of touch with reality. They're not unstable or unbalanced or insane. I become the one that they point the finger at and say, oh, she's the wacko. She's the one that's paranoid. Because essentially that's what it looks like when I'm running out there like I am, showing those planes going over or trying to show any way that there is vehicles that are around me, like when I've tried to show the road and the different things in the past. Most people just say she's just overly paranoid about everything around her. And this is how they defeat you. And as I am angry too, I hardly look like a high vibrational spiritual human being, even though I'm trying to say that that's what real human beings should try to get back to, realising this and living that way. If I'd lived a better life, I may not be in as bad a situation as I am. I pointed out that was what happened 2,000 years ago when a particular Christ being, or Christ-like being, the Christ spirit is simply a high vibrational loving spirit. That's all it is. It's the opposite to Lucifer, who was anti-life and technological in its thinking. A dead dark vampire, you know, like in the old horror movies, a being that because they've fallen from grace and fallen into what's that word that they use in the book, iniquity. That means fallen into envy and dislike and contempt and all the negative emotions. This being became contemptible of its creator, of real life human beings which they saw as a threat and offspring of creation, and felt ostracized, because this being then thought, well, look, I'm much admired, I had a high position, I was number 2, second to none, what am I now? So then it's a bit like when you have children, you know, like how sometimes you'll have one baby and then you might have another baby, and the original child feels a little bit outed sometimes if they don't get as much attention. Sometimes, you know, the second child then, because, you know, when you have a baby, you have to give it all the attention because they need that for your survival. And maybe the other child doesn't understand that because they're still young. It's kind of like just lack of understanding and immaturity, but it happens. And this is what happened with Lucifer, who turned into like a satanic being, or, you know, in other words, became dead, dark, and very antagonistic and anti-life or anti-human. And that's what happened. And that's what's been happening for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years in the earth, and happened before the original natural, supposed natural earth was created even, and before the original man, woman, or, you know, and even that is like, as I've tried to explain, the deception is that many believe that the original man was like the God entity, you know, the two-faced, one-eyed man-woman being. So the two faces were like just, and that this being didn't need to cooperate or make love to its counterpart in order to create life or even just to live. It was a self-sustaining single being, godlike, and almost you could say narcissistic in nature, you know, in narcissism in a way. Of course, you could say human beings can be like that too. But I think the whole purpose of being in the earth is that you're not meant to be as singular as that. You can be, and you can sustain yourself. And at this end time, it almost looks wise, because if you, as I've said, if 9 out of 10 people are secretly against you and want to secretly make you negative or unhappy and bring you down, if you want to look at it that way, then it makes sense that you probably shouldn't be looking for love, because you're not going to find it. You're only going to find your own downfall, whereas on your own you might be able to sustain yourself. Those planes look low and big to the naked eye, but the mobile just sees them as a little pinpoint, you know. So that's the way it goes. So that's why it's a waste of time me you know, opening the door to show them. And I must just